Hello everyone, welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I wanted to create a place where people can go to get inspired, get motivated, or find some clarity and get tools to create a radically loved life. I will do my best to provide information on a variety of subjects, including yoga, holistic health, life coaching, spirituality, meditation, and overall mindful living. Each episode will bring you some of the world's best spiritual leaders, entrepreneurs, yoga teachers, coaches, along with some of my closest friends, and we will talk about their life experiences and journeys to create something more out of their lives and how they continue to grow to make that happen. Hey guys, Rosie here. I just want to say I am so grateful that you're listening. We are just getting a massive amount of response on this podcast, and I am so grateful that you're a part of this radically loved community, that you're enjoying the content and that you're enjoying all the guests and that you're still here and you're still working on yourself and your journey and your path. And I pray that you've received some tools listening to the guests or listening to any of my ideas or topics on meditation or yoga and how these tools can help you create a life of purpose. To continue to help us give you the best content, you can subscribe to this podcast, and most of the time you can just do it from your phone, from iTunes. Click subscribe and write a review. This really helps us continue this path and this journey, and we love doing it so much. And again, I'm so grateful that you're here. Let us know what you thought. Thanks for listening. Michael Catherwood is an American radio personality. He is best known as Psycho Mike for his prior work on The Kevin and Bean Show on KROQ. Mainly, his current job is as co-host of Loveline with Dr. Drew. Mike has been a dear friend of mine for over a decade. I've followed him in his career and his beautiful wife, Bianca Kalick, and their beautiful daughter. They are amazing people, and I've always really looked up to Mike and his process, his career, his dedication to his recovery, his dedication to success and to working on himself and his career and his life. And I thought it would be really great to have him as a guest on our show to talk about his story and his path and all the things that he's used in his life to continue to inspire him and to continue to thrive and be fueled forward. I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I've known you for a long time, and I've watched your career flourish, and I've seen you grow, and now being a family man, you're still this enthusiastic, hilarious, fun-loving human that has a lot of wisdom and insight, in my opinion. And I want you to tell our audience just a little bit of your story, how you got to be where you are, like where you grew up, and just kind of what led you into this career path that you have.
I grew up in like the Pasadena area here in Los Angeles, and I had a relatively normal childhood. I was a good athlete, but nothing. And I never had any delusions of being a professional athlete. But I definitely was a very athletic kid. That was my most dominant kind of extracurricular activities. I was a terrible student, and I never really had any aspirations to do anything white collar, not because I didn't respect it or want to. I just never really assumed I would do that. I by the time I was 15, 16 years old, I really thought if I could get a union construction job or maybe be a fireman, that would be the absolute top of the ladder for me, because I was such a bad student, and I saw the other kids that were academics. They were legitimately intellectuals, and I just knew that I wasn't like them. And then when I was about 18, right before I graduated high school, I got into a band that was relatively popular in like the punk rock scene at the time in the late 90s. It was just starting to, there was a resurgence of punk rock and hardcore. And that was like the worst thing that could happen to me because I had some justification for telling my parents, like, I'm going to be a rock star.
Right.
If it was a complete pipe dream, there was nothing but empty desires. I think it would have been a lot easier for my parents to talk me down from that. But I had a bit of legitimacy when I would make those claims. I mean, we'd opened up for legitimate bands, and I was going to different towns in the Southwest and playing and getting money, a little bit of money, but I was a professional musician.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I graduated high school and I went about doing that. I moved to San Francisco, and I had already developed a big passion for drugs and alcohol. But at the time, right at the college age, 18, 19 years old, there's a bit that you kind of just excuse. You assume it's being that age, and everybody parties hard, and there's this frat guy kind of idea. Mm-hmm. And before I knew it, the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and using it overwhelmed everything about my life. I had the front man for the band I was in died. I moved to the East Coast to try to jump on that train because at the time, now we're talking like 2000, that was where it was at in the kind of music punk rock scene, and moved to the East Coast, and that's when it got really, really dark, and just drug alcoholism completely consumed my life. Absolutely, it was the only thing and everything that I had going for me. I'd wake up in the morning and had zero ideas or dreams or goals, and I was just consumed with how I was going to get high and drunk that day. And and it would start from the moment I could get my hands on anything.
Yeah.
So I moved after that. Inevitably, didn't work out. Obviously, that's a really difficult way to try to make put life together.
Yeah.
I moved to LA with kind of in a groveling state to my parents. I just need help, and they put me in a program, and I stayed clean for about a year. Fell off the wagon, and then I got clean again in 2002. And that ever since then, that's when my life, I guess, really restarted. It was October of 2002. And I got a job at KROQ in very early 2003, just as an entry-level job. I got a job at the pretty legendary rock radio station here in LA called KROQ, as just a means of paying the bills, because I figured I'd rather push a broom at KROQ than I would at somewhere else. I was like a security guard at a rehearsal studio, and I was a janitor at a prosthetics lab, and there was this opening to work at KROQ, at menial labor. And I got that job, and it was very early 2003, like end of January. Yeah. And then by August, September of 2003, I started working for the Kevin and Bean Show. It just kind of transitioned so quickly, and it happened in such a, I wish I could say, like, I had these very fully formed dreams of being a star, and I'm going to make them come true. But it just kind of happened. I got to know people at the station, and I busted people's chops like I like to do, and they busted mine, and we had fun with stuff, and I'd prank call the morning show. And I started making parody songs, and next thing I knew, they wanted to hire me, and it was just kind of so quickly that I didn't even have a chance to appreciate it. And that's really how my life and everything really took a dramatic shift. At that point, I was in radio. I was a broadcaster. I never had any intention of doing that, and it just kind of happened. And luckily, also about a year into it, I realized I might actually have some ability, and I'd never had anybody really pat me on the back for anything. I'd never had anybody tell me I was good at anything, and it felt so good. It was such a high, and it was the only thing I'd ever found that replaced actual drug use, in that it was something I could devote my time and effort to and focus, and people would congratulate me and embrace what I would do. And I'd never, ever had that before in my life. And it was like the most rewarding feeling. And from that point on, I was just so hooked that I devoted myself to it. And that was 2003. So now 14 years later, I'm still, I'm a radio guy.
And it's been such a beautiful path to see, as an outsider, obviously, seeing that progression. I mean, I remember listening to the Kevin and Bean show when you got on, and just seeing the evolution over time and how that, allowed you to create this incredible, thriving career, not just as a broadcaster, but just as somebody who I think a lot of people look up to and are inspired by. And I actually really love the fact that you can admit to this idea of not having somebody encourage you, or like not having those, you had dreams to be, well, in a sense you are a rock star. It's just not playing playing music, right? I mean, it's sort of like the same sort of recognition and notoriety, and like you're an inspiring person in the world. And so I think that what I find most intriguing is not only obviously your path to finding you, and finding solace in your recovery, or your way of connecting to your life, but can you tell us a little bit more about how that has evolved for you? Like going from a place of feeling hopeless or stuck to, getting to create this incredible life.
Well, I mean, I think it's very kind of appropriate that you said you become your own rock star without playing music. And I don't mean that to be self-aggrandizing. I mean that it's a very good way of looking at it, because it was all about perspective. I mean, I could have been very disappointed, the Happy Gilmore syndrome, that I didn't go on to write songs and become this big, Dave Grohl figure. But I mean, I got the reward and the approval from people from doing something else, and it was a matter of shifting my perspective on life. And at the very beginning, you asked me about becoming this big success. I certainly don't think of myself as some massive success, because I'm not Howard Stern or Rush Limbaugh or one of these people. But I, at the same time, can come home every day and really look at my family and the life that I built, and having a real sense of comfort and peace of mind. And to me, being able to then recognize that and appreciate it for being such a big success, that's when everything kind of started to fall in line. I didn't have to have a certain status at work, or a certain title, or a certain level of accomplishment. It was more about recognizing the successes that I did have. Mm-hmm. And when that came about, it was a tremendous shift. I mean, and it's very easy to say, "Oh, I've done that. I can appreciate what's good in life, and I understand and absorb only the important things and all the things that money can't buy." But it's another thing to truly act it out and live it, to get to the point where you're present in the moment, being with your child or with your wife. I think a lot of people, myself included, for a long time, you say you want to do that, you say you are doing that, but it's a lot harder to actually apply it. And it wasn't until very recently that I was able to do that, to legitimately become present in the moment and appreciate all that was really important in life, as opposed to bemoaning the fact that I wasn't this massive radio star. I wasn't a huge television figure, or whatever it may be. I just took time to wake up in the morning and really realize, like, I have a very healthy child that loves me, and I have a very healthy wife that loves me and has proven that she will embrace me even at my darkest times, even when I'm not at my best. And there's a lot more value to that than being the next, Regis or something.
Right. Well, and I think too, it speaks a lot to your character, and being able to realize that at a young age, really, because I don't know that had you not been that secure just in your own ability, you may have had this much success and maybe had the different perspective. What changed during that time where you really wanted something, right? You had other dreams. What helped you shift your perspective to being more in that moment and more just grateful about what you had at the time?
Certainly getting clean and really doing, not just, I wasn't just devoid of drugs and alcohol when, I had made vain attempts at trying to get clean before, but in 2002, I actually did the work. I really applied, and I'm not saying that the 12 steps is the only way to do it. It definitely is the way I did it, and I'm a by any means necessary guy. Dr. Drew and I talk about it the same way. People always, if you don't want to go to AA or NA, that's your business. Whatever helps you stay clean. It worked for me, and doing, actually not just showing up at meetings or just saying I'm doing the steps, really applying myself to recovery in a constructed way. It totally, it hurt a lot. There was times when it felt like I was scratching at a scab. But when I kind of got down to those underlayer, those layers beneath the scab, that's when I really changed the way I looked at things. And I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky in that right as that was happening, I also had this job come about where I wasn't just having people tell me, oh, good work on that. I was having two of the guys that are going to go down in history as the most successful morning radio, syndicated morning radio team in history, in Kevin and Bean, and then also Ralph Garman, who works for the show. These were really successful, very established, very clever, very talented people who were telling me good work, and that was so thrilling, and that was so fulfilling that it really put fuel in my engine to go after it, and up until that point, like I said, my only goals was to not be a loser. I never had any concrete idea of I'm going to make it in life, I'm going to be a success. I just thought, I hope that by the time I'm an adult, I'm not a complete loser. That was it was a survival mechanism. I hope I can at least have a job. I hope I can at least not live with my parents, and people don't look at me as being someone who got left behind by society. That was really my only aspiration at 17, 18. And it was only compound, like that was extra hurtful because I was surrounded by these kids that had these rather grandiose goals and had the schoolwork and the extracurricular activities and the personality to kind of back it up. There wasn't a bunch of BSers around me. There was, I had 4 or 5 kids in my graduating class that got perfect SAT scores, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's another planet. So going to a really good college and getting a really good job, that's a whole nother world. Don't kid yourself. Just try not to be dead or a felon by the time you're 25 years old. That was really what I was aiming for.
Yeah.
I think to have the juxtaposition of having this radio team of really successful, proven, clever people giving me moral and professional support, that was really the fuel that I needed. Without that, I don't know if I could have continued going on.
Yeah, this is like a common theme I hear a lot when I have guests on, or when I talk to people about, those pivotal moments, or just having, quote unquote, people are like by chance, or I call it faith, I call it, it's just divine guidance, whatever it is, however it shows up for you, you have to kind of be able to take in those moments. And what I hear a lot from guests, it's like, I don't know how it worked out. It just happened to work out. What do you really do? Do you really think it was by coincidence that these things started to happen in your life?
I think that a lot of times, without question, it's luck. And anybody who has any success, any level of success in the entertainment industry, and any facet of the entertainment industry has to have some luck. And that actually is one of the more frustrating aspects of the industry, is that, one of the things that I've always loved about lifting weights and working out in the gym is that it's the only thing in life I've ever found that it was directly proportional to how hard you work. You didn't need anybody's intervention. You didn't need anybody to give you a job. You didn't need any special skill. There wasn't God-given, leaping ability or speed. You could work. I grew up in that world where I knew guys that just came out of the womb that were going to dominate me in sports. And I could work as hard as I want. And they were faster. They were taller, stronger, bigger, and they were put on this earth to be athletic. But if I go to the gym, I know for a fact, if I devote myself and work hard enough, I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get, I'm going to have a faster mile if I just stick with it, because I'm going to the track every day. I'm going to have a bigger deadlift because I'm 3 times a week. I'm going after it, and I'm working on it. And it was directly proportional to exactly how hard was exactly what you got out of it. And in the entertainment industry especially, it's so not like that. I watch my wife work so hard or be so talented, and if she doesn't get a role, she's not getting a role. And 10 people need to sign off on her getting a job, and there's so much in between success and hard work. And so, I definitely say that, it's luck. I was lucky. I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and then have those people around me willing to support me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's no possibility I would have had even the chance to be lucky if I didn't put myself in those positions. And by putting myself in that position to be in the right place at the right time, I had to get clean. I had to work 3 jobs. I had to change the way I looked at my future and stop being so pessimistic. So there was a lot of factors that I can claim I was responsible for, that put me in the position to be lucky, and there's zero possibility that if I was still this self-deprecating, self-effacing figure that was just looking for my next high and hoping to die, I was committing suicide on this installment plan. If I was still that guy, there's just none of this would have happened. As much as it is that was pure luck, it was completely impossible if I'm still in that position. So I guess people, it's the difference is that there's going to be those opportunities that come knocking at your door for everyone. But you have to create the world where you're able to hear the knocking. It's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, it's it reminds me of The Secret, that the film, right, where the little boy just dreams of a bicycle and it just shows up at his door, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You have to be able to do the work. You have to be. It's all relative. You have to be able to do the work, to make the commitment, to have the dedication, to have the drive, to want those things to happen. You could have just easily have given up and just sat and not done anything, right? But you were cooperative with, the by luck, the by luck component in your life. Why do you think that we have such a hard time being honest with ourselves?
I think it's a lot of things. One, it's really hard. That's the end. I think it's one thing to be an honest person to others, and we should strive to do that. But you kind of grow up with a certain basic level of ethic and morality that most people are honest people. They're not going to lie directly to your face, and you come to a point in your life where you become an adult, and that kind of just comes about. I feel like that's baseline adult, ethical kind of structure. Being honest with yourself is really hard, and it takes consistent effort. That's, getting back to it, is that's the biggest aspect of really trying to do a 12-step program, and is that it forced me to do that. If you are gonna kid yourself, lie to yourself, fib yourself in the slightest, the whole thing goes off the rails. And I'd never been really painted into a corner that way, where I had to really try and be very thoroughly honest with myself. And I also came to the conclusion at that point, like, this, if I'm going to continue doing this, it's going to be really hard. And I think that there's a natural aversion to doing stuff that just seems at times insurmountable. And you see that, I think, play out in everybody's life in a bunch of different ways. The idea of being a huge success in any field at times probably seems daunting and you want to give up. The idea of taking on any hobby that's really difficult, learning to play an instrument, learning a language, learning to surf, learning whatever it may be, it sucks at first and it seems impossible. The idea, I mean, I never learned how to formally swim. So for me, surfing has been the biggest proving ground to me, because I'm terrified of the ocean. The idea that I will fight, my friends think it's so funny because I'm a terrible boxer and MMA fighter. I mean, I'm horrible. I like it. I enjoy it. I do it. But I will fight anyone. And they go, "Oh, you're insane. You have no fear." I go, "No, it's just in this realm. I'm not. It just seems silly. Like, what's the worst that can happen?" But you try to get me in the ocean, and I'm terrified. I mean, I really am terrified. Walking closer and closer to the ocean, I feel myself getting more and more uncomfortable and awkward, and I think of excuses not to do it. So I keep going back. And every single time, a wave smashes me to the bottom of the ocean, and a board hits me in the head, and I think to myself, why am I doing this? It's terrible. And it's the hope that I'm going to keep plugging away and doing the hard work, and someday I'm going to be good at this, and I will have the gratification of knowing that I got to the other side. And the same is that is it in a nutshell. Being honest with yourself is that people try it and they do it and they sit there and they meditate, or they go to a shrink, or they get into therapy, whatever it may be that kind of gives them a taste of being honest with themselves. And they go, "Oh, this is horrible and really hard and really scary. I'm not going to do it ever again." And I got to be honest, that's not that crazy. I mean, it's pretty reasonable from a purely human standpoint, survival standpoint. No one wants to do what makes their animal brain go, "Ah," and panic. That's how we live. That's how we survive. Is that your reptilian brain recognizes to be scary and bad, you go away from it. But that's just kind of the bottom line. And I certainly don't have it all figured out, but I've definitely come to the realization that that's why I and so many other people have had such a problem with it, is because every piece, every bone, and every shred of you that is just your base animal being is telling you, don't do that. Yeah, that is getting you outside of comfort. And another thing is that life is pretty comfortable, especially for us Americans.
Yeah.
I understand there's people that are struggling. I totally get that. And I remember the days of literally wondering, like, how am I going to get through this month? There's no possibility I will be able to afford how to feed myself and afford, rent. But at the same time, like that, it really pales in comparison to people's lives who are truly uncomfortable, who have children being attacked by wild animals or Boko Haram or whatever it may be. And so our lives with our iPhones and our technology and our pretty overall a very loving kind of culture and supportive culture, our lives are pretty easy. And so we kind of invent these ways of finding stuff that's scary and challenging, and a lot of times it's just in our head.
Yeah, well, it's like that's another big question, is how important is it for us to do things that make us a little bit uncomfortable?
I honestly think it's the biggest aspect of success in life. People have such a weird American men in particular have such a weird definition of success because it almost always boils down to professional and financial. But as far as like success in life, I really look at that. That's the only and the biggest crucial factor is assessing your weaknesses, assessing what scares you and what makes you uncomfortable, and diving right in instead of running away from that fire. You have to force yourself to run towards it, and no one's going to be able to do it all. No one's ever going to be able to just take on every challenge in their life, but we all know those things that make us feel bad and make us feel awkward, or that friend or that family member that is toxic, but you don't want to get around to having that talk with them, or that employer that is abusive, whatever it may be. There's people, places, and things in your life that are uncomfortable. And you know that you have to go after it if you really want to be happy, but we all kind of shy away from them. And not shying away from those things is the only way to go. I mean, it's the only way to truly have any fulfilling long-term satisfaction in life.
I think that especially like our generation, we definitely did have more of a visceral experience with having, to do, not that this coming generation isn't going to do the work, but I feel like our generation had sort of like the tail end of still having those experiences where we had to work hard and kind of do the work and have more honest self-appraisal. What do you think is going to happen to this next generation of kids that are growing up with, the onslaught of social media and the state of the world in regard to them achieving their dreams or even having dreams for success?
I think that there's a lot of immature things that we all did, and whether it be bullying other people to make ourselves feel better, to deal with our insecurities, being consumed with our appearance and clothes or whatever, material objects. And as you grow up, you start to reevaluate things, and hopefully those negative kind of empty things go away and you start to fill it with important stuff. And I think in a place like today's world where you have Twitter and you have Instagram, where people are looking, when you and I were little kids, you had to be a model or a professional big time actor or actor to have people evaluate a picture of you.
Totally.
No one ever in my life looked at a picture of me and then gave me feedback of how I look. I'm sure chicks ripped on me at looking at the yearbook. They had sleepovers and they looked at pictures. Oh, look at how dumb Mike looks. But I didn't hear it, and no one. And now every single American teen is getting brutal criticism, and so I think your self-image is understandably. I think kids are going to have a bigger problem with that. I think understandably, materialism, kids are going to have a huge problem with that, and that kind of plug and play of the hard work will equal results. I don't know how you do that when your peers are YouTube stars and successes, and you look at that and you think, why would I want to go to college? Why would I want to get a job? Why would I want to be an electrician or a cop or a construction worker when this other 19-year-old is getting hits for playing video games and getting millions of dollars? Why would I want to do that? And that's a legitimate gripe. If I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid nowadays, that's a legitimate gripe, because not only are the empty, vacuous things that we had to work through kind of a little bit more tolerated, they're celebrated nowadays. And I really feel for, I've gone beyond picking on millennials. Now I feel for them, and I go, man, you gotta see it through, because you have so many more pressures trying to make you be an empty person than I did. At some point, I was kind of forced to either put up or shut up. I could just give up and be this loser figure, or I could do something to make myself not wallow in that self-deprecation, I gotta think there's a lot more pressure to just stay in that self-deprecating world nowadays, when, like I said, there's so many people and so many peers that they assume that unless you do something rather extraordinary and get a lot of positive feedback for it, that you're not successful. When in actuality, nothing could be farther from the truth. And this is an assumption, but I just don't think that this generation of kids, teenagers and college age kids nowadays, it's really hard for them to appreciate how meaningful and how important it is to be all the jobs that don't get attention. To be a teacher, to be an electrician, to be a cop, to be in the military. In a day and age of YouTube and social media and mainstream media being so ubiquitous and just nonstop and assaulting.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that, because you don't turn on the TV and hear about the public school teacher doing great things. Don't turn on the TV and hear about the great cop who, devoted his entire day to saving a family. You definitely turn on the TV every day and hear about the cop who shot someone who supposedly was innocent, or the teacher who is molesting your students. So you're inundated with nothing but negative imagery about these important jobs, and you're inundated with nothing but positive information about being a socialite. It's really difficult to kind of heads or tails about that.
Yeah. That's something I have such a hard time reconciling, just in any industry. Look, and in the realm I work in now, even it's the same sort of thing. Like, what gets celebrated is the beautiful yoga pictures where you're doing this beautiful, like, amazing pose in some turquoise beach somewhere, but like the picture of the teacher teaching her kids that have PTSD yoga is not going to get as much attention. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
It's just it can be a little frustrating, but I think that, I'm still really hopeful, of the next generation, and I pray that they listen to people that have lived it, or people that are in it, like you or I, that can relate to being that age and not really having all the answers, and being able to explore those things together, and to feel encouraged to do the work, and to know that those things are also celebrated, and it is important to have those jobs and to make a difference in a substantial way, and not something that's not sustainable. I don't feel like that realm of the world, or this new platform, is sustainable, right? It just feels like
it isn't, and the bottom will fall out, and hopefully the kind of Armageddon, the personal and psychological Armageddon that people will feel when the bottom does fall out, hopefully it'll be short-lived, and then we come back. Because the way I look at it, however our parents behaved was absolutely what I didn't want to do, and I feel like that was my peers as well. So when someone who's 20 now has children, maybe that generation will just rally against it, and everything will come back around again, and there'll be a return to a more traditional look at growing up and living. And because, like you said, we can't go on like this forever. It's not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. Yoga is a perfect example. I mean, you could see an analogy to yoga in its modern state right now to kind of what's wrong with at least American pop culture, in that, like you said, someone doing this elaborate, really exotic pose in Fiji is people's idea of yoga. And if you cannot do said pose or afford to go to Fiji, then you clearly can't do this. And in actuality, as well as anyone, that's really not even an important aspect of yoga. It's about, centering yourself and developing that ability to become present in the moment, And it doesn't matter if your warrior one looks like you put your one foot in front of the other. It's a matter of doing it and a matter of getting there. And no one wants to put a picture up of themselves with a pot belly doing these horrible poses, but it's just as important and just as meaningful as the person doing these elaborate poses, and sometimes even more so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's doing the real work. But no one wants to put a picture of that. It's not exciting.
Yeah, nobody wants to see it's like putting the messy parts of us exposed. It's like we only want to show our best we only want to put our, no pun intended, our best foot forward, right? Like we want to show the world that everything is just unicorns and butterflies when really like it's not like that, and the reality is that people do have to do the work. Like it's not it's a process, like yoga is about union. It's about connecting mind, body, spirit, space to centering and creating that self efficacy and that groundedness in you that you need to go out into the world. Like we don't need any more yoga teachers in the world. Like we need people practicing presence and doing things that are important and speaking their truth and going out in the world and exposing the people out there that are of service and that are like making a difference and that are out there helping the homeless and are helping people with mental health issues and are helping our kids and are doing those things. So obviously I don't want to go off on a tangent, but we feel the same way about this.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really difficult to try to get people to acknowledge that nowadays. I myself included. It's not as if I it just came to me so easily. I mean, I find myself feeling rather inadequate because of Instagram and Twitter and things, and looking online and seeing. And I know, I don't want to speak for her or tell tales out of school, but my wife's the same way.
Yeah.
She very hard for her to be a 40-year-old woman in Hollywood and constantly be barraged by younger, thinner, whatever, more successful women.
Yeah, but it's like that's the thing. But the point is like what so more success, like what does that even mean now? It's like, so you have X amount of I know so many people out there that have a following that have nothing to offer, and I'm sorry to say, but I'm not sorry. Like that this is where we're getting lost with this facade of success. It's not even real. I mean, people are out there like paying for followers. You know what I mean? Like what is that doing to us,
Right. No, you're exactly right. And there's no way to kind of quantify who out of those people who are having real success, who's enjoying it. It's just you kind of just are hit with these images, and my mind. I know, I'm guilty of it. My mind goes wild with all these great positive things that are happening in this person's life just because I'm looking at his six pack on Instagram. I'm like, well, and also he must have great relationships with women, and he's wise and he's rich, and that just immediately happens. Just because this guy put up a picture of his perfect physique, and it's in your mind. I don't think it's natural to then look at that picture and go, yeah, but that guy's probably pretty empty. His psyche doesn't get a lot of stimulation. My mind goes in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, exactly. And look, and sometimes those things help propel us to continue our work, and they're inspiring, but I think that there's a very fine line, and we still need to go out there and actually put the work in to achieve what we want. And look, nobody's perfect. I get it. I'm totally the same way. I feel the same way. Like I see certain people and I'm like, wow, like look at how many people they get to work with, or look at all these beautiful places they get to travel. And at the end of the day, I find myself caring less and less because I'm like, you know what? I get to do what I love, and success looks different for everyone, So just kind of going back to that, because I feel like that's just kind of where we've gone. What sort of advice can you give the people listening that are trying to figure out what success looks like for them?
you have to get to the point and I say this as someone who still struggles with it. I'm not trying to, I don't want it to sound like I'm in some ivory tower trying to tell people how to live their life to be okay. But I do know this, the little that I've been able to deduce is that, and it's really hard. And like we've talked about for a huge chunk of this podcast, it's even harder nowadays where you're getting people's negative feedback a lot. You have to divorce yourself from what you think society wants you to be. You have to divorce yourself from what you assume everyone else is thinking, and really study what makes you happy and what is going to be fulfilling, because you lose sight. I mean, the royal you, all of us lose sight of the fact that like life's pretty short, and we only get one of them, and to waste any time worrying about what someone thinks of your jeans or the car you drive or what vacation you went on, it is, we'll be sitting on our deathbed wishing so passionately that we can get those moments back, and wishing that we never wasted any time concerning ourselves with that BS. And you have to just get to the point where you're constantly in tune with what would make you happy, really happy, thoroughly and sustainably happy. And I don't care how nice that car is, it's not going to do it. I don't care how big your house is, that's not going to do it. Now, I'm not crapping on the idea of being financially successful. Working hard to get to if you've always dreamed of having a Lamborghini, working hard and buying that Lamborghini, I'm sure is very fulfilling, and it's great, and do it. If that makes you happy, do it. But just understand that is an accessory to happiness more so than it is the actual meat and bones. And it's really hard to do it, but you gotta constantly just remove that connection to what everyone else thinks or wants you to do, and find out what it is that you like and what you truly find passion for. Because like you said, getting back to your line of work, if you are constantly trying to live up to some Instagram version of what it means to be a yogi, and you're getting away from working with kids with developmental disability, or working with veterans with PTSD, you got to stop. You got to stop, because I know firsthand. There was times when I was shooting for something that wasn't what I wanted. It was what I thought everyone else wanted from me, and that is just the biggest mistake that we're all making right now. And if I could give one piece of advice, it's to just work hard to say F them all, and worry about, and that's even tough to say, because I don't want that to be misconstrued into thinking, oh, be selfish, be self-absorbed, worry about you. No, what I mean is really identify what brings you happiness and shoot for that, as opposed to taking into consideration what everyone else wants you or what everyone else thinks will make you happy. I remember in my time hosting Loveline, one of the greatest moments for me personally was off the air. Ricky Gervais was kind of giving me some advice about being funny and being creative, and go with it. And he said, as soon as you start writing for the audience, you're sunk. As soon as you start sitting down thinking, well, what are people going to think is funny? I know I think A is funny, but I think B is what people will find funny. As soon as you start acknowledging B, you're sunk, and it's over. You gotta always write for what you think is funny. And I think that that plays out in a larger scale in life. As soon as you start sending your kids to the school that you think everyone else will think is nice, well, you're sunk. As soon as you start eating the foods that everyone else will think is healthy and great, you're sunk. You gotta find that what truly makes you internally happy and satisfied.
Oh, Mike, you're so right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's such great advice, and I think it's so needed now. And I think that people will really appreciate your honesty, because I think it's super helpful. And I agree with you 100%. We gain more out of people's authenticity and honesty than by what, we think other people might like or may want to listen to or whatever. I mean, even with this podcast, Mike, I mean, I was telling you, like, I started this podcast just to be able to talk to amazing people and like my friends and teacher friends of mine, and just to be able to talk about these particular topics, because I feel that even in my field of work, they relate to everything and to everyone, because we're all living in a human experience. And I think if I started early on to listen to what everybody told me I should do, and where I should take it, and how I should ask my questions, and how I should engage with my audience, like, I was totally resistant to it. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to commit to doing that. I want to just continue to have this be authentic and fun, and have it be a part of what I do and what I provide for the world. Like, I don't want it to turn into an infomercial. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, okay, well, I'm going to respect your time, because obviously we can talk about this forever. I just have a couple.
Very important. Yeah, I have a very important thing to do.
You do. You gotta get right back to it. Just a couple more questions for you. So I'm curious to now, what's important in your life?
Taking advantage of every moment with my daughter is definitely the most important thing. And I know that sounds like a great soundbite, but what I mean by that is, of course, I mean, what creep isn't, concerned with their kids?
Right.
Of course, you're concerned with your children if you're a parent, but I don't want to have those moments go by where I'm reading a story to her, and then I'm also kind of like looking at my Twitter out of the corner of my eye, or I'm going for a walk on the beach and I'm kind of just nodding my head yes, so that I could kind of get her to stop rambling, because she's 3 and her brain's the size of a grape, and sometimes most of the time she doesn't make any sense. So instead of like just going through the motions, really working on being there and being in it, and not phoning it in, with and not one shred of that time with my daughter. I want to make sure that I'm there, and I can look back on it, and say that I did it. I did it, and feel fully confident that, I look at it as in the end game, and I've started to. I just turned 38. And I'm by no means like an old man, but I've made a transition into, I'm at that point in my life where I can't just look at what is best for me right now. I'm starting to look at the future. I may want to go deadlift 500 pounds and really push myself, but is that sustainable? Is that sustainable for 38-year-old Mike when I'm 48? Is that sustainable for me? Is that going to harm me more than it's going to hurt me? And I think about that, and I just want to do what's best for me when I look back as an old man. Hopefully I make it to being an old man, and I have a full ride here on earth. I want to be able to look back and say that I devoted pure maximum intensity and focus into the important stuff, like caring for my wife and caring for my kid, and everything else outside of that, it'll fall in order, I think, if I do that.
What advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
The advice I would give my 15-year-old self, the number one piece of advice, would be what I kind of talked about with giving everyone advice. When I was 15, it was even more of an issue that I was so consumed with what is everyone else going to think, and what does everyone else think is cool. So I need to do that. And I never, ever I spent so little time thinking about what makes me happy. What will I do that is interesting, and what am I passionate about? I spent almost every waking moment of every single day thinking, what will girls think is hot? will guys think is cool. And I tried to chase that all day, every day. And I never developed any real sense of self. I pressed pause on developing self-awareness. And that would be my biggest advice. If I could go back like Biff in Back to the Future 2 and talk to my young me, I would look in the eyes and say, just go home. Don't worry about this party or this event or showing up with this, this cool outfit, or even taking up hobbies that you don't even like just because you think everyone else will think it's cool. Just go home, like really get to know yourself. Do what you think is cool,
Yeah. By the way, I'm like Back to the Future too. I feel like it's really happening. Okay, but I digress. So, what advice would your 45-year-old self tell you now?
Hopefully he would say, just don't stop dancing, because I every single day, more recently than any other time in my life, I have these ideas of what I can do in life, and as opposed to just being defeated and giving up and really just conceding to the fact that I'm not going to do cool things or great things when I was 18. Now at 38, I have ideas and belief that I can do them, and I'm being shot with this BB gun of doubt every day by not getting a job that I auditioned for, not getting a show that I created picked up, not having people, not getting a promotion, not whatever it may be outside of my family life. There's these forces that are poking holes in these dreams that I've established for myself and belief in myself that I've established. That is very new to me. I never had that belief in myself. I never had these dreams, these fully formed dreams. And the professional world, the social world is poking holes in them and putting their finger right in my chest and saying, who do you think you are? You can't do that. And I just hope that 45-year-old Mike will look back and say to 38-year-old Mike, don't stop. Don't give in. Don't allow those people to convince you otherwise. Just keep on trucking.
Oh, so good. Yes. That's great advice, 45-year-old Mike. I can't wait for him to tell you that again every day. Final question.
Yeah.
So, Radically Loved is a forum that I wanted to create, for people to come to listen, to understand the concepts of yoga more, or meditation, or just finding tools for living. And Radically Loved is this idea that we are held by this force of life, universe, God, baby Buddha, whatever higher power of your understanding. We are radically loved and we're supported. The universe is conspiring for us, not against us. So the question to you is, how do you feel radically loved, and what do you radically love?
I feel radically loved when I will, and I don't mean to be insulting or any way or it's just the world they came from. I didn't come from my family of origin, my mom and dad and my sister. I didn't come from a family that was overly loving, outwardly loving. I knew my parents loved me. I knew my sister loved me, but we were not the touchy-feely, hug, kiss, talk about it type of family. And so now to have like a hippie wife and like a granola, earth child, jungle child baby, it's so amazing to come home from work and like they jump for joy and run to give me kisses and hugs and tell me they love me. That it's those moments are like almost overwhelming. I get hit with this tidal wave of being loved. And so those are the moments when I feel loved. And then I was thinking about how we had this prostitute. She was an escort, a professional escort, and she got out of the business. she got out of the business and started to become an advocate for women's rights in the sex trade and things like that.
Yeah.
And she was like she was quite successful in Southern California as an escort. Mm-hmm. And she told me something that always stuck with me. And she said that the overwhelming majority of men and sometimes women would not pay her for sexual stuff. They would pay her just to hang out with them, just to come over and maybe cuddle or just have a conversation. And I thought about how above our sexual desires, above our material desires, that speaks volumes of how much we just need companionship and love, that people were willing to actually pay the money. If they couldn't find it in their life, they were going to pay money to have a escort come over and just give them a hug or hang out and watch TV. And I think we grossly underestimate how much that exists in society, that if we really put ourselves out there, it's easy to say, and it's every generation's done it, like, oh, well, we're so materialistic and we're so unkind and we're so this and that. Well, not really. I mean, I think if you really pressured people and you really threw it out there, that the universe and people as a whole are pretty loving, and that is a force that is out there that is more than happy to give back to you if you just allow it to happen. But I don't think, for the most part, we love ourselves at all. I know I work on it. It's, there's this horrible self-image that is created, and if you work on loving yourself and get to the point where you can legitimately say you do, I think it's a lot easier to tap into that, to tap into that universal love and compassion and caring that exists. People think about it. They're like, oh man, this guy cut me off and gave me the middle finger. And those incidents, they stick in your head. But you completely overlook the hundreds of millions of times someone opened the door for you, or a stranger told you look nice today, or someone, which happened to me, someone at the airport saw that I was to have a bit of a depressed look on my face, or that I was concerned about something. And a complete stranger walked up and said, "Is everything okay? You look a little bummed." You don't really take those moments into consideration because they just kind of fly over you. But those moments of the guy cussing at you or giving you the middle finger or cutting you off, or those stick in your brain so like cement.
Yeah.
And we got to look past that, because I think 99% of the time with 99% of the people, it's a pretty caring, loving world. And so when you get to the point where you can really legitimately say you love yourself, I think that you kind of tap into that. It's like putting the pieces together so that all the kind of the sunlight can sink in. But until you put those pieces together, it's all disjointed, and it's very easy to assume that the world's not a kind place. But I think it is. I really do. And I think that the only way to get into that world where you recognize it and feel it is to first truly be able to say that you like yourself, you love yourself, and self-love. Self-love gets distorted and looked at as something selfish and something self-absorbed. And that's not what it's about. It's not about getting massages or getting your hair done. That's not self-love. Self-love is being able to truly look at yourself in the mirror and like what you see. And like we said at the beginning of this podcast, problem is that that's really hard work. It's really hard work. And if there's one overreaching message I would give is do the hard work. Do it. Because I know it's hard work. And it's hard work. And a lot of people acknowledge it's definitely hard. So don't get scared away.
Mike, where can people go to follow you and get more information about you or anything that you're working on? Where can they connect?
At Mike Catherwood on Twitter and Instagram, and all the unique, disparate pieces of my professional life. You can get all the information you want there, and I try to honestly, I try to keep that like a pretty positive thing too, because I think that, you know, we talked about how horrible social media can be.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, like, I repost a lot of really uplifting stuff, and I try to keep it pretty lighthearted.
Yeah, no,
you know?
I think it's hilarious. I love when you post fun things, and you often post pictures of your baby girl, and it's just so sweet, and it's great. I think it's very uplifting. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Oh, are you kidding? This was so much fun. I was like, you're doing my podcast, and it's gonna be great. Like, okay. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us, message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes, write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks.